Hi everyone, so I'm here today to share 8 cards that I made using the add-on products to Hero Art's April 2019 La Vita Bella card kit. So let's get started with our first set of cards, and for this I'm using the Color Layering Village stamp, and I'm going to start by stamping the first layer of the village onto my A2 size card base, and this is Copic Express It paper, or I'm sorry, Express It blending card that I'm using, but I think any Copic friendly paper that you have would work. So for the first layer, I stamped it with Butter Bar ink by Hero Arts, and then along the top of our village, I stamped it again with some Pumpkin Pie ink by Hero Arts, just to give a little bit of a shadow to the top of the building. Now we're going to use Dark Chocolate ink by Simon Says Stamp for our second layer, which is going to add the detail to our little village, the windows and the doors and the sides of it, and some shadows also. I am now going to start stamping the little greenery that's around our village, and there's this large bush stamp, I guess, and so I'm going to stamp the first layer of that with some Celery Green ink by Lawn Fawn. This is the only light green that I have, so that's why I'm using it. I think any light green shades that you have would work here for the first layer. And I also seasoned the stamp with some Versamark ink before using it. And by seasoned it, I mean I just stamped it with Versamark ink and then stamped off and then added my ink so that my layers wouldn't look blotchy, which can sometimes happen with the first layer of these color layering stamps. For the second layer, I'm using a dark green for my bushes, and this is Avocado by Reverse Confetti. Again, this is just what I happen to have. I don't have a lot of inks, but I think it works fine here. And if there are any spaces between my building and my bush, I'm just coloring it in with my Copic marker with Y26, which matches really well with the Butter Bar ink. Okay, now we're going to stamp some trees towards the back of the village, and I just masked off the little section so that we don't stamp over our little village. And I'm using my celery ink again, and then we're going to use this green leaf ink for our second layer for the bush by Simon Says Stamp. And it's very similar to the avocado, no real difference. I'm just playing with the few inks that I do have. Now we're going to fill in some of the areas that need some more foliage with our tiny bush stamp that's part of the Color Layering Village. And I'm just stamping it kind of all over the place really with Sage Leaf ink by Lawn Fawn, and then I'm going to do my second layer with Christmas Pine ink by Gina K. All right, now moving on to the rest of the design, we're going to put a big old moon right in the middle of our village, and I took a 1.5 inch circle punch and punched out some masking paper and then put my masking paper circle in the middle. And then we're going to start coloring around the moon with some B60. And I don't have to be neat here because we do have that mask down. And then we're going to use some B63 to build out our evening sky. And as you can see, I am coloring right over our trees on the left. And the reason I'm doing that is because we want our little background images to appear as though they are in the night. So we are going to cover them with some color. And now I made a mistake here. I'm using warm gray for the rest of my sky. And that's not going to work because warm colors don't look very nice against that cool purple. So in a second, I am going to go over my warm gray with some cool gray and try to fix that up. So this is Cool Gray 5, and it's pretty, as you'll see, like with Copic coloring, the colors are usually pretty forgiving. A lot of times you can, if you don't like a color you get, you can go over it with another color, especially when the colors are so dark like they are for this evening sky. Everything's going to really blend pretty well into each other by the time we're done. So now for the very edges of the sky, we're going to use C7, and then I wanted to give this a blue tint. So we're going to go over the edges with some B37, which is a nice dark blue. And I'm just going to color in my edges right over the C5 and C7 and the previously W5, I guess. And then we're going to work our way towards our moon with some B34. And that B34 blends really, really nicely into the B63. And then we're just going to use our B63 and our B50 until we're right up against the moon. And then we'll be done with our sky. Now we're going to start working on the ground in the scene, and we're going to use all of our YG 90 series for this. So I am now building out a little road. So I want there to be a little road from the village that goes off into the distance, and it's kind of winding because I see this as like a really romantic little Italian villa up in the mountains somewhere, and I thought a windy road would work perfectly with that kind of thinking. So now I'm just building out the edges of the road with some Y95, and then we're going to fill in around our bushes with some YG93. And the method to my madness here, what I'm doing is I'm trying to leave a section in the center of the ground as light so that it's picking up the sun's reflection. And I want my road to be really dark so it stands out. And then I want the foreground to be pretty dark. And I want it to look kind of have like a watercolor look to it. So that's why I'm using kind of scribbly strokes here and there. I'm not really going for a realistic look. I just want it to look kind of all mushed together and really watercolory. And so I'm just working back and forth with all of my YG 90s, 91, 93, 95, 97, and 99 until I get a look that I like. And here I thought that it was necessary to go back over and restamp some of the detail on our bushes because they got lost along the way, and that's what I'm doing with my Gina K Christmas Pine ink. And now I took off the mask on the moon, so our scene looks a little bit prettier for right now, and I'm just going to keep working on my shading in the foreground. And again, I'm keeping my YG 91 and 93 towards the middle so that we have a nice little glow from the moon, and then the top edge I'm using darker colors like YG 95 and YG 97. And I'm also putting some little dark shadows around the bushes as well, and I'm just going to keep working on that until I get a nice blend. And then I wanted there to look like there were maybe some mountains in the background, so I just built up the edges of the scene with my darkest YG, which is YG 99, darkening up the road. And now I'm going to add some more scribbles in to make it look like maybe there's some trees off on the sides of our card. And yeah, I'm just futzing a lot here because I was kind of making up as I went along. But you don't have to futz around as much as I do. Now we're going to add some shading onto our bushes, and I'm going to use YG 99 and 97 towards the bottom. And I'm just following the little lines that I had drawn in, or not drawn in, but stamped in with the second layer of our bush stamp. And what I'm doing here is I want there to be like a really light part on the tops of the bushes so that they look like they're being hit by the moonlight. So I want it to have like really, really dark detail on the bottoms of the bush and then lighter as you get up towards the top. And then once I'm done, I kind of blend everything together with a YG 91 or 93, just so that the colors are all consistent. For our tiny little bushes, I'm using BG 96 and 99 to do my detail. I'm doing that same thing with the little pine trees in the back. And then every now and then you'll see me flick my pen straight up in the air, and that's just to give the illusion that there are these little pine trees way, way back in the distance that just kind of go on forever. All right, I'm just going to work on my road a little bit more. And now I'm going to add our details to the moon. I'm using some warm grays, warm gray 0, warm gray 1, and then I'm going to blend everything together with some warm gray 0, 0. I'm just making little scribbles, kind of making a little bit of a C shape in the moon. And now we're going to add some more shadows to our village with Y26. And we're going to add the shadows coming up from the base of the village and then also coming down from the top. And then we'll darken that up with some Y28. And then I'm just filling in the windows with W6. And that's it. So now we are going to finish up our card and add our sentiment. And this is the Village of Thanks sentiment that comes with this stamp set. And we're going to stamp it with some black VersaFine ink right there. And I like that a little bit of it kind of touches the moon and then goes out into the rest of the scene. I put some clear embossing powder over the sentiment just to make sure it stands out. And that's it. So here's another version on the left that I had done. I like my road much better in this version. I like the way it winds through the lands. It really helps to reinforce the idea that it's a bumpy terrain, and I like that it gets really narrow as you get close to the village. I also really like the blues in the sky, and for the version on the left, I only used my B37 and 39. I didn't use any grays in that background seam if you want to duplicate it. And I also, for the village itself, I stamped it with some black VersaFine ink for the second layer instead of the chocolate brown. So I'd love to hear from in the comments which of the versions you like better. Okay, let's move on to our second set of cards. We are going to use the Italian table stamp and die set for our next set of cards, and this tiny check pattern paper set by MFT. And I'm going to start by attaching a card panel made out of some of the green tiny check pattern paper by MFT. And then I'm going to take this little fishtail panel and pop it up on some foam tape and then put that right into the center of our card. Okay, so now we have to decide which sentiment to use, and I thought this Eat, Drink, and Craft sentiment from the stamp set was great, and then also a little yum in the upper left-hand corner. I colored in my images off screen with Copic markers, and for the little napkin, that's probably my favorite part of the stamp set, I just stamped it with some lobster red ink, and that's all you need to do for the napkin, and then just die cut it, and then you get this great little gingham napkin. And any color would work, I think. I just went with a traditional red since we're making an Italian table here. For my little wine glass, I'm going to pop it up on some foam tape, and like I said, I colored all of my little images with Copic markers off screen. And for the wine, I'm using the V20 series for this, so V20 to 28 for our little wine bottle and wine glass, and then our little olive branch and little olives on there. And I'm just arranging everything till it looks good to me. And now it's starting to look good. And the last thing we're going to do is add some glossy accents to the little olives and then also to the wine glass. And then that is going to complete the design for the first card that we make using the Italian table add-on stamp and die set. And I really like how that looks. I think it's cute, a perfect gift for a little crafty friend, right? Okay, so let's move on to the second version. We're going to reverse the design here, and for our main panel, we're just going to use some white cardstock. I'm popping it up on foam tape. If you hate waste, then just look away, because I use a lot of foam tape here to make sure that my panel stays nice on top of the card base. And then we're going to take our little gingham focal panel this time, and I use some purple pattern paper from the Tiny Checks pattern paper pad by MFT Stamps. Put that right in the middle, and now we're going to put our sentiment on, pop it up with some foam tape, and make sure it overlaps on our little fishtail focal panel. It says made with love. I love it. And then we're going to add a little bowl of pasta with some tomatoes on top and some basil on top. Put a little napkin to the right of our little pasta bowl, and then add a fork and a spoon. I wanted to add a fork and a knife, but I I lost the knife along the way as I was making the card. And then I realized, I'm like, you know what? You don't use a knife with pasta. You use a spoon and a fork to eat it properly. So I guess that was the Italian gods kind of speaking to me to make sure that I presented this traditional Italian meal appropriately. All right, so now I'm almost done adding all my little images onto our card. The little cut tomato, we're going to put it right next to the Made with Love sentiment. And then here's a little cup of espresso to go along with the pasta. And we'll put that up in the upper left-hand corner. And to just jazz things up a little bit, I'm just going to add some glossy accents to our basil leaf and then to our little cut tomatoes. And that's going to do it for this card. And I just love that. I think that's the cutest card ever. All right, so let's take a look at our 2 cards we made with the Italian table stamp and die set. And now we'll move on to our last set of cards. And for this one, we're going to use the Venetian Village cling stamp. So this is a really large stamp. And I use some Versa fine ink to stamp the image onto my cardstock. And this is watercolor paper. Canston watercolor paper, just the typical easy to find watercolor paper you find in your craft store. And then I am using some Zig watercolor markers to color in our little village. And the colors that I'm using for the building, I started with some dark brown 62. Actually, that wasn't dark brown, that was just regular brown 60. And then we built it out with our 61 light brown, and then some 75 brick beige for our lightest color. And then we're going to take some 67 mustard as well. And I'm just trying to give the look of like a really old stone building that's maybe discolored. And so I just want it all to look like all the colors kind of dripping into each other so that we have darker colors towards the top, some little patches of dark and light kind of all mixed together, and then with our darkest colors at the very base of the building. And I'm just playing here. I'm just kind of adding color to just give it this real pretty discolored look. And then we're going to take our dark brown, which is the 62 in the Zig color family, and then just have that come up from the side so that it looks like maybe it's like dirt or dust from many years that is just kind of on this building. And now we're going to work on our windows. And for the windows, I'm using 92 blue gray for my light shade, and then 302, I'm sorry, let me say that again. 92 blue gray for my dark shade, and then 302 haze blue for my light shade. So what I do is I color in the window with the haze blue, the lighter color, and then making kind of like a little upside down U shape in the windows, I go in with my blue gray, and then I go back and blend everything out with my lighter blue, the haze blue. And what I realized here is that you should really only do about 2 windows at a time. Otherwise, the color dries too quickly and then it's more difficult to blend together. So I kind of learned that lesson about halfway through coloring in these windows, and then I started doing that. I think it would also be pretty if you wanted to add some lavender colors into this. And again, the look I'm going for, I just want it to kind of all bleed together and have this really pretty, whimsical, watercolory look to it. So I don't want it to be perfect. I just want it to look pretty, really, right? That's what we're all aiming towards with our cards. So now we're almost done filling in the windows, and we're just going to do this last big window, same method that we used for the others, and looks good to me. So this card did take a lot of time to make. It took about an hour, but I have sped up the coloring a lot, so I think we'll get through in about 5 or 10 minutes in this video. For the stone, I am going to use a mid-gray, a natural gray, and a gray tint. So 91, 90, 91, 902, and 96 for all the stone accents. For the back or the area like behind the doorway here, I'm just using black and dark gray, and I'm making sure there's a little bit of lightness above the steps just so you can still see the detail of the steps. And now we're going to fill in the stone, and I'm using the same colors for the stone railings that I did for the little stone arch around the doorway. And I'm just going to go around and fill all that in, again with my mid gray, my natural gray, and then my gray tint. Now to jazz things up a little bit, I added some additional color here and there. So for the little window frame up top, there I am using some Persian green 33, and then some deep green 44, and then some other colors that we're going to use. Wherever you see lavender or purple shades, those colors are light violet 81, deep violet 84, and then lilac 83. We're also going to add some pink details here and there, and for those we're going to use 230 pale rose and 200 sugar almond pink. And I think we'll be getting to a little pink detail pretty quickly. And then the last set of colors that I used is for the greenery, so like the little plants that are hanging out of the little flower pots on the windowsills. For those I use 53 yellow green, 46 mid green, and then 44 deep green for those. Okay, so here's one of the little pink details, and for that one it's 230 pale rose and then 200 sugar almond pink. And again, it does take a lot of time to work your way through this stamp, but I think it's well worth it. I think I've made 4 different versions with this stamp so far. There are 2 watercolor versions that I made using my Zig markers, and I'm going to show both of those at the end of this little sequence. And then I also made 2 versions with my copic markers, and I'll show those as well. And each one took about an hour, so I think whatever color medium you use, there's just a lot of details on this stamp, and it just takes a while to get through. I found that the more that I did it, because I did this 4 times, that by the time I got to the 3rd one and I knew how much time it was going to take, I just kind of settled in and enjoyed the process and realized that, okay, my steps are I work on my building first, and then I fill in my windows, and then I fill in the little stone arches, and then I'll go around the window frames, and then at the very end I'll add in all my color detail, like on the little flower pots that are in the windows, and the little greenery that's hanging from the windows, and then the little kitty in the upper right hand corner. And then the very last thing that I do is color in the clothes on the clothesline, and then finally the cobblestone street below. And I found like once I sort of knew what I was in for in terms of time, I could really enjoy the process, and I will probably go back and make a few more versions of this card when time permits. One thing I was thinking of doing was using the Hero Arts watercolors to make a version. I think that that would be fun. Maybe even just taking out some traditional watercolor paints, and then maybe trying like a black and white version with some copic markers. That's another look that I'm interested in, and maybe if it is in black and white or in shades of gray, then maybe using one color, like having the details on the stamp be maybe in like a turquoise or a red. I think that that might be a nice look for this stamp. So this is a really versatile stamp. I think there's a lot that you can do with it. So I encourage you, if you have it, to just kind of play and enjoy the process. Okay, so now we're done with our coloring, and I'm going to peel off our tape. I was originally going to cut down the sides, but I decided it was so pretty with a little white rim that I would keep it and just have a really big card. So we're going to add a sentiment that says ciao, and this sentiment comes from the main stamp. And then that's it. So that is our Zig Clean Color Real Brush marker version. And let's take a look at the other versions that I made. So here is a typical A2 size card, watercolor version. And then this is the copic version that I made. And then here is also a little pop-up window version that I paired with the gift die that goes along with this stamp set, as well as the gift box stamp set and then the envelope stamp set. And so those are my versions. So I'd love to hear from you which that you like the best, and also what types of coloring mediums you're using for your own versions of the stamp set. I think this is definitely my favorite out of the kit. Okay, so let's look at the rest of the cards we made today. Here are our little color layering village cards, and then we have our Italian table cards, and so that's it. So these are the 8 cards that we have using the add-ons to the kit, and then I'm also going to show you this card that I made using the main kit. And if you like this card, then I urge you to take a look at the video tutorial that I posted making that card, as well as some others from the main kit. All right, everyone, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it gives you lots of ideas, and I'd love to hear from you in the comments as to which of the cards you like best and what projects you're working on. Have a great weekend, and I will see you again in the next video.